Put on the phone.
Absolutely.
A fire line went to the pole station. Focus on. Those sounds like.
Yeah, my mom, hi from my meeting.
So I should get back, but I'm not sure if. Only knows if it needs it or not, but it's nice. So when you spot it, it's.
They sold.
You put it in, you'll put back line.
6:30. 6:30, calling the meeting to order. Yeah. Thank you. So I've been informed, even though we were promised minutes, we still don't have them. So I would recommend that the town find somebody else to take the minutes to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to Whitney. There'll be
Okay,
a cost to take them that way, but we'll get them done.
okay. I have a bunch of things I'm gonna show about budget related things and spreadsheets I made and lots of numbers. Which I'm sure everybody will love and enjoy. But before we get to that, I assume that Ed has a number of things he wants to share, and I will give him the floor first.
Actually, why don't we just go through your stuff? I have one proposal, but let's go through the numbers and let's talk through that so everybody fully understands where we're at.
Okay,
I have a proposal on a way we might be able to lower the tax rate a little bit.
so two things. So everybody knows the big sheet, right? I will go over the big sheet again in a zoomed in view. And I'll try to discuss it better. I will share it. Share my goals.
The big sheet that we got last meeting.
Yes. And so it has largely stayed the same.
Sure, that's all right.
The town made a couple small changes, and I think it came down to a couple of like less than $10,000 on that range. So the numbers have moved to small amounts, but we're talking tenths of a percent on the overall budget. So I know it's not big on this. Let me see if I can try to make this big. A little bigger, but not great. It looks huge on my laptop. I'm just trying to make it so it's a little bit easier. All right, I can actually read that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Good.
Do you want me to try to make it a little bit bigger or not?
No, that's good.
Okay,
That's good.
all right. So the water fund. So. And all the columns, this is great. So. One small caveat, so when we're comparing budgets for 2024. So there's something called an encumbrance. My gut feeling is half the people here know what it is and half the people don't. So I'm gonna try to explain it. An encumbrance is, say, you had planned to spend money in 2023 and you still plan to spend it, or you've actually spent it, but the bill hasn't come in and it hasn't actually hit the books in 2023. You encumber it to 2024 and it shows up in 2024's budget. However, it shows up in 2024 budget, but it was approved in 2023. And so when you compare year-to-year budgets, you want to take those out of your comparison for 2024, because otherwise you're artificially inflating your 2024 budget comparison. Because in fact, if we look at the 2024 budget, right, there was a big dollar amount encumbered from 2023 to 2024 that was like $200,000. Well, if we compared our 2025 budget against that one, it would look great because the numbers actually came down. When in real reality, that was 2023 money. And so this is the simplistic way of explaining encumbrances. So you have to kind of make tweaks by taking your 2024 budget and taking a couple of things out that were actually related to 2023 and before that. Roughly correct?
Sounds good to me.
I'm trying for layman's term to the how, right?
And I just want to let people know on that, since I've come in, we've been a little bit stricter on what can be encumbered. And for the most part, unless we're engaged in the project or we have a contract signed, there's very little that I allow to be encumbered from year to year, just because they didn't get to a project that we wanted to. I make it fall into fund balance and rebudget just for transparency purposes.
Right.
But
But like, you basically have to pay for the work in the year that it was completed.
we try to, like this year, I encumbered some money for the TIF project that we planned on doing, the floodway, but we've signed a contract with the person. He just hasn't completed the work yet, so we encumbered that money over to pay for in the next year.
Thank you.
Before I got here, some of it was, I just didn't get to that. Can I encumber that 5,000 to next year and do it? And I've been telling them, no, let's re-budget for it. And
Right, but my point is, like, I believe last year we had, was it loan payment or something that we encumbered, and it was a big dollar amount.
it was about 200.
And so if I don't subtract that out of the 2024 budget, some of these numbers would look better. And the thing is, they would look better, but they aren't really all that better. So all that being said, so I made this sheet based on this. Where is it? We got a new one. We got a big new stack of paper. So all this paper is a spreadsheet, and all the numbers in here are tracing back to all those pages. I'm just grouping them by department. Okay, so water fund actually went down by 3%. It went from 390 to 378. Again, for everybody's education, most people know, but some don't. The water fund is essentially, at the end of the day, its own nonprofit, right?
Right.
It gets its own revenue, has its own expenses. Money that goes into the water fund doesn't get used for the police department, just the same way that money for the police department doesn't get used in the water fund.
Right.
So those monies don't impact the tax rate, is what it essentially says. Sewer fund. I have 950, went to 975. It's a 2.6% increase. Also, the number you see here in the middle is what percentage is that line item of the whole town budget? So all funds, not just the general fund. So water fund is 4% and sewer is 10%. So those are the two that kind of stand on their own legs. So now we're going to go to all the 01s. The 01s are part of the general fund. Executive went up by 3% from 276 to 285. I think this stands for elections, regional and vital or something. I'm used to the numbers. I know what the numbers are. The meanings are.
That's registrations.
Okay, sorry. So it goes from 144 to 142. So actually that went down by 1.2. Then a bigger one, finance, which includes all your benefits. So a big part of this is benefits, FICA, insurance, all those things. And I think it's about half. That went from 1.85 to 1.822. I'll talk a little bit more about the breakdown of labor versus operating expenses versus benefits once we go through this whole list. So this actually went down by 1.5%. Zoning and planning went from 106 to 113. Buildings, I think that's mainly, is that building maintenance?
A lot of it's building maintenance
Right.
and
Went from 297 to 281, so that went down by 5. Cemetery went down by 10%, but only $1,000 because it's a small budget. 4196 is, so I should have done better on the descriptions. You can see I'm a numbers guy and I have all the account numbers there, but that went from 66 to 72. I couldn't come up with a name for this guy, but I don't know what 4199 is.
Other general government.
Okay, other general government.
Miscellaneous.
Other duties
That
as
includes
assigned.
the
That's good.
hydrant maintenance and the
Lights up.
cable access.
Okay, so that went from 37 to 5. So police went from 757 to 833. Part of that increase is because we reduced the budget last year by not going to full staffing because we had 2 openings, and I believe we had removed half an
Yeah,
officer.
about 34,000.
Right, and so we added that back this year, and so that's why this looks like it's a bigger increase, but part of it is bringing back that
Full staff.
full staff. And that was to help last year's budget, which we will also get to because I made a special spreadsheet for that too. Ambulance went from 132 to 149. Go up. Fire went from 138 to 125, so that's a 9% decrease. Inspection went from 97 to 102. So dispatch, I believe that's all of that is a fixed contract, went from 106 to 114. And then DPW, that's a big one, that went from 1.65 to roughly 1.7 million, or 3.7% increase, and they're about 18% of the whole budget. Sanitation and waste went from 708 to 735. So animal, that went from a small to another amount, and I believe that was mainly because we were doing a better allocation of where people are spending their time.
Community nursing.
Right, thank you.
And
Thank you
that's
for correcting
offset
me.
by
Revenues.
fundraising. It's all
Right.
fundraising money, not tax money.
Human services 71 to 68, so that's a decrease. Recreation 162 to 148, so that's also a decrease. Library from 200 to 211. And then we have a couple of smaller ones here. General debt stayed the same. We have a couple of 0 ones. Retirement benefits fund, I believe we decided there's enough money in there now. We don't need to add more. Is that correct? Okay. And then these are all CP debt. I believe that is debt services on the,
Oh, that's on the Route 4A sewer extension.
okay. And then this is a TIF account, which also does not impact that tax rate. And then I keep this guy all by himself at the end because it's transfers between accounts, right? And so I keep that one separate to avoid double counting things. So all in all, and again, there's other sheets floating around. The numbers are slightly different, and we're talking 5,000 here, 10,000 there. And I believe it's mainly associated to these adjustments that I made without checking with her on what is encumbered and what is not. And so you'll see, so here's the general operating budget without debt went from 6.84 to 9.65. And so that's all these 01 accounts. So it doesn't include water, doesn't include sewer. So I have that showing going up by 1.9%. Now, I show that just to break out debts. If you now add the debt to it, we get to 7.547. That going to 7.674. So that's about $127,000 increase. I'm showing 1.7%. Alyssa has a slightly higher number, but the difference is like $20,000. And that main difference is in the 24 encumbered amount. Numbers on the other side are pretty much an exact match. So we're about in the 2% increase range. If I now go left on this massive spreadsheet, and I have no idea how well this is going to work. So you can see this is our debt going from 22, 23, 24, 25 in the general fund. and it's low and it jumps up. Those are the building projects. And so from 24 to 25, they're staying the same because loan amounts are the same. So that number is increasing by 0%. Yeah, so we go further left. These are what people tell me are the operating expenses. It's essentially everything except wages, salaries, and benefits and that. So that has slowly increased. So that went from $2.82 million to $2.84 million, or 0.6% increase. Next go the benefits. And so benefits, so the benefits went from 22 to 23, they went up. From 23 to 24, they went up. And then with the help of Brad's suggestion, there's been a change to the benefits plan and actually it went down. And so total benefit cost went down by 5%. And I call it benefits, but that includes all the FICA, insurances, not just health, but like unemployment, all those things. And that is for essentially everybody in town. There's a little bit of money here for the water and sewer fund to cover the cost associated to the town employees working in the water and sewer departments, their benefits. So the total benefits actually went from 1.56 to 1.48. Makes sense? So that's a 5% reduction. And then all the wages, they went up 7%. And that includes the last major portion. I believe there might be a tiny amount less, but the majority of the compensation study adjustments.
Will be pretty much even except for a couple positions.
And so that 7% also includes half the police officer. So this does not mean everybody is getting a 7% raise. So it also covers, again, the numbers are small, changes to salaries for, I don't want to call them part-time people, but like seasonal employees, call them seasonal employees.
Yeah, and this isn't all compensation raises. During the year as we're coming in to hire people, sometimes we have to hire them at a little bit higher rate than the person that actually left.
Right.
So it's an
Or-
increase in salary, but
Yes.
that's what we have to do.
And then it also covers overlapping employment between staff members that we know will retire.
Yeah, we do have two of those this year, assessing and recreation. We budgeted pretty much for like 13 months instead of 12 months, so we can overlap on each of those for training.
Okay,
Do we really have to overlap recreation though?
Yes.
I think we really do. Yeah, there's a lot to learn in that department. It's not as simple as most people think it might be.
I think you have to know, the new person has to learn the software you're using to sign kids up and, and blending the 5 towns, keeping track of that.
A lot of it's that, a lot of it's meeting the people that they need to be working with for each different thing. So it
so
may not be a month, but I do think we should budget for a month just to make sure that we have the timing right. I want to go out fairly early for that one and see who we get. And if we get a really good candidate, I'd like to be able to bring them on.
So that was a quick race through the budget. I have 2 more topics I'm going to cover. First are, some of you have seen this. So at the end of the day, people care about their tax bills. Okay. And I want to illustrate something. So this is the histogram you have seen. I have 90% of the data for the other 2 years. I'm missing 10%, but we'll fill in the 10%. So 2 other histograms I'm going to show will change a little bit. right? So don't go take a screenshot and go at the public hearing, hey, you said in this meeting it was this and now and the number's that. That's because it's going to change a little bit. However, I believe the message will stay the same because I already have 90% of the data. And that is, so this was the histogram of essentially everybody's tax bill in town. And this is literally everybody's. And so
Every property.
every, rephrase, and Wendy might correct me while I say this, every tax map. Is that the right statement?
Every tax map property.
Yeah, right. And so there's a code, and yes, I have more information, but I don't care. I only care about this unique identifier that says this bill is associated with that tax map. And I just compare that one from 22 to 23 to 24. Yeah, actually, no. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So I can actually go that particular point in town, how their taxes go from this number to that number to that number to that. And then I look at, okay, how much did it change from year to year? Right? And so this is 23 to 24. And so the numbers are all over the place. Some people had their bills go down by $1,000. Other people had their bills go up by over 3,000. And there's a big spread in the middle. And I can tell you, that's the revaluation. That is not the change in the budget. And that will become obvious when you see the other histograms. So if you don't know what a histogram is, a histogram essentially says, here's a bunch of tax increases. I'm going to make buckets. Okay, that person's bill went up $300. Okay, he fits in the 250 to 500 bucket. One. That person's bill went up to $900. Okay, he fits in the $750 to $1,000 bucket. One. And then goes through all the bills. And then this is how big the buckets got. And so when you look at this, most people, 731, correct, not people, most bills, and this is individual bill. If you own 5 properties, you have 5 bills. So most bills went up 0 to 250. And in fact, if you look at the median, and I will explain what median is. Median, I think it's important, I'll explain why. Median is the number in the middle. That means half people have a bill that went up less than that, and half the people had a bill that went up more than that. The median is 248, which means half the town saw their bill increase more than $248. Half the town saw their bill increase less than $248, which includes decreasing. So the reason why I pick median is, if you look at the average bill increase is actually a little bit higher. And the reason why you don't necessarily want to look at averages, say that Joe decides to build a $10 million mansion somewhere. That one bill, when it gets built, is going to massively change the average. But it's only one person. And so that's why people look at median. That's also why when you look at government things, they don't talk about average household income or average home. They talk about the median income and the median home. Because if you look at the average, I can tell you the average is going to be much higher because of Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos, right? It's going to drag it up like crazy because those couple of people are so far on the side of the scale that it offsets it. And so, for example, if I now look at the year before, where there was no reassessment, I get this. See how narrow that is? That is because people's pie slice stayed the same, mostly. Yes, your pie slice will change if you go do a renovation or if you build a new house, but people's pie slice stayed largely the same. And that's why almost everybody is in 2 buckets in the middle.
Can you go back to the previous slide for a second? What was the mode again?
The what?
The mode, what's the most?
The most is 731 in the 0 to 250 bucket.
0 to 250.
And actually, I made a spreadsheet to do the 25 percentile, 50 percentile, 75 percentiles. I have all that. While, so here the highest is 731 in the one bucket. Here, there's over 1,000 people in the two buckets right next to each other. And so what it essentially means is when there's a reassessment, it just goes. While if there's no reassessment and most people's pies stay the same, everybody is in these two little buckets. And the buckets are taller. So like
How often do we do reassessment?
every 5 years. Like if you look at the year before that, look, 2,000 all in one bucket. So this is gonna go in the public hearing and on the town meeting, because when people freak out over this one, it is the reassessment that did this. If your tax bill went way down, it's not because the town saved a lot of money, it's your valuation went down relative to all your neighbors. If your bill went way up, it's because your valuation went up compared to all the neighbors. So, which means next year, we expect it to look like this or this again. In 5 years, it's gonna look like that again. So I'm gonna keep track of this every year. Right? And so all I'm doing is using data to try to explain some of the things that happen. Okay, so now the next question I got was, and this came from more than one person, how is it when our budget is only increasing 10%, 2%, that we're seeing this large predicted tax increase? And I might get trouble for saying this, but I would love to go back to a recording from last year and say, I told you so. So if you go to the top line here, these numbers are gonna match the number on the other sheet. Because this number, oh, it's too small. You should have said something. Does that kind of fit? Okay, so we don't see the percentages, but that's okay. I'll use just the changes. So this number is now just the sum of all the numbers that I showed earlier. It's the sum of all the funds. 9.4 million. Last year it was 9.3. Right? So it went up 111,000. Just like the general fund went up about 150. Now, the general fund is not the only thing we pay. We have the CIP article every year. That also has taxes. And I did this sheet a little bit different than what the town kind of used to do, mainly because the sheet looks a little different from year to year, and I'm trying to do the same thing every year. So the numbers should align up very well. The message will not change. So then there's things that we agree, hey, we're gonna fund this at a fund balance. Like here last year, this was money that came back to CIP because of, how do I say it? Somebody threw a piece of metal in the in the chipper. Okay, the chipper was broken one year. We got the insurance. Like the years did not line up when the insurance payment came and when the whole chipper was settled. So they ended up in different years, which caused a little bit of an accounting issue. That's where that came from.
You're using somewhat different numbers than what we were just given.
They are,
So if you stay with your second additional appropriations and adjustments.
Yeah.
You don't, all we have in here for 2025 is 579,368. You've got 553, and then below that, you've got the 46,9, and you've got the 20.
Right. So that's why I said, so here, these numbers are exact matches. Okay. These numbers are exact matches.
No, they're not.
I said,
They may have
yeah,
changed.
I have an additional column. 23, 24, 25.
Yeah.
This is 24, 25.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so the numbers do line up. There's an additional column.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is still money that gets spent, even though it doesn't really get spent, but it gets spent. So if you look at the monies that are flowing out from all sources, they went in 2023, they were 8.7 million. And in 2024, they were 9.9. That's kind of why everybody freaked out, right? And this is when it comes to more importantly, from 2024 to 2025, it only went up from 9.964 to 10.035. That's only $7,000. To me, like, hey, great, taxes aren't going to change much, right? Because the money's, it's barely increased from last year. Hold on, we'll get to that.
Pay ourselves.
So, two things have changed. One, we are forecasting, and I'm gonna let Ed comment on that. We are actually forecasting a decrease in revenues. Even though we've always forecasted a small increase in our revenues. For a reason that Ed will explain in a second, we're forecasting a decrease in revenues. That decrease in revenues is actually about $167,000. So if there's less revenues from non-taxes, it's gotta come from somewhere. So it's gonna come from taxes. Okay, you wanna comment on the decrease?
We can go through it in a little bit. I'll have to pull them in front of me to know,
Okay.
but
So if you look at it, so here, there's a total 167 decrease. The bulk of it is, we're thinking there's gonna be less money coming from Concord,
Coming from what?
Concord,
from the state.
I think that's a given.
And so if you take that out, you know, it's 140 out of 167. So almost the whole decrease is us being more conservative in what the monies we think is gonna come from Concord. And that's because of rumblings we hear.
we have that and we have the FEMA. We have, what, 58,000 if I remember correct? In
Yes.
FEMA, that's not coming this year.
That's not coming.
So that's a big chunk of that too.
So here's the meat of why are things so different this year from last year. I'm gonna make this column a little smaller so you can get it all. Okay, so if you look at appropriations from all sources, all departments, in 2023, it was 8.7 million. It increased to 9.964 in 2024, and then going to 10.035 in 2025. That's only a 0.7% increase. Very good if you think about the fact that the inflation is like 2, 3.5, something there. So that's actually
Good.
to some extent Beltec.
Excuse me, I asked the same question, but I think
These numbers are a little bit different.
than what we were just given.
A little bit different because of the way I'm handling undesignated fund balance.
So some of them are quite different. I'm looking at 9.456
Yes,
for appropriations. Once you get 10 million up there, that's.
right. And that's mainly because of where I'm handling undesignated fund balance. I'll get to that.
Okay.
So the reason why I want to do that is I wanted to make it very clear how much money is coming from the undesignated fund for different years, because that's where all the reason of the difference is. So the second line is see under operating transfers for these 02, 03, 05, 06. That is the water, sewer, CIP, and TIF. Is that correct? So that doesn't come from, but it's not CIP. I don't know what five.
It's the capital projects, the Route 4A sewer.
Okay. So that doesn't come from their property tax. That's interfund transfers, so you take that out. Okay, so now the numbers are 7.1, 8.1, 8.25. So there's a $100,000 increase of 1.4%. That is very close to what we think the general fund is going up. The reason why it doesn't go up as much as the general fund is because the general fund is not going, the CIP contribution is going up much less than the general fund, so the two combined is a smaller percentage. If you now take the revenues out, right? Remember, the revenues went down by 165. So if your expenses are going up by 110, and what's coming in is going down by 165, The difference is 279. So now that is going up. So when you look at to be collected from taxes before use, and it actually says use of fund balance, it went from 5.1 in 2023 to 6 in 2024 to 6.28 in 2025, where $100,000 increase because we're spending more, and then $165,000 because we think we're going to get less money. So 278. So that's a 4.6% increase. Okay, fine. That's still not 12%. Well, in 2023, we used fund balance for projects, one-time projects. You know, they're in the 2023 presentation and other things. So that actually reduces what you have to collect from taxes. So the 5.1 became 4.9. In 2024, we actually used 317,400 from fund balance, and we reduced the CIP contribution by 114,000 because we said, hey, we have all these little things sitting in small bank accounts. Let's just clean that out. Let's put it into CIP and we'll reduce the CIP contribution. So we really reduced the taxes on people by, add those two numbers up. Why isn't that picking this up? We reduced taxes on people by 432,000. Well, you can't keep doing that. So what became 6 million last year became 5.57. So now you're not looking at $278,000 increase. You're looking at a $700,000 increase because we used fund balance to pay down the taxes last year. And you can call it, well, we didn't really pay down the taxes, but at the end of the day, we used $317,400 from fund balance and $115,000 from stuff sprinkled in different accounts to lower the taxes. Well, A, the money in the sprinkled account is gone because we used it last year. And B, fund balance, well, we used it. We're going to talk about fund balance in a second. Or can't keep doing that, right? That's going into the savings to pay for the mortgage. Right? You might do that 1 month. You do that every month, you're going to go bankrupt. So that is why, even though our expenses, our budget is going up 1 to 2%, our taxes are going up more because last year, A, our revenues went down, and B, last year we used $400,000 of money in different accounts to lower the taxes. And this is where I told you so last year. Makes sense? And so, you know, it's spreading the pain over 2 years, but it means you have the pain 2 years. So that's why it's 12.8. Okay. He's not done yet. He has more spreadsheets. Okay. So. Where's my other spreadsheet?
Where is an in contract?
Okay.
Make sure we're good.
So. I have a reliable source that told me. I'm trying to make it as big as I can. One more. Okay. So I show, 12.7%. Elisa has 13%. I made it 13%, right? I can make it 12.6 later and just show you the difference is going to be very small. So if the town goes up 13%, a reliable source says the school is in the 1.3% range. Okay, school is in the 1.3% range. I picked 2% for county and state. If somebody says, hey, Dimi, pick 3, I'll put 3 in right now and we'll see what the numbers change. But if county and state are 2%, school is 1.3, town is 13, the tax bill will change 5.1%. You don't believe that?
No, because the school one's missing stuff.
Okay.
They've got a 3-year contract coming up this year that's not in the budget. It'll be a warrant article. plus
Okay.
all of the capitals.
Okay, so what should we use for school?
I'm hearing more on 5.
Year 5?
That's what I heard from somebody today.
No, the total, I suspect the total will be 2.5 to 3.
So.
Yeah.
I will check with my source. So,
It's 1.3 for the budget to budget, but that doesn't have the warrant articles in it.
got it. So if it's 3, like I can literally just change numbers,
Right.
but if it's 3, then tax will go up 6.
Yeah.
And I anticipate, people can argue, it's not gonna look like this.
No.
It's gonna look like that. So take your current tax bill at 6%. That's my speech. Questions?
Can you do me a favor just to see what happens here while we're on this slide?
Yeah.
If you move our increase to 10.8. Put those down a little, so you guys can see, because I have a proposal to take I don't wanna say 2 years of pain to 3 years of pain, but to phase out of what we did last year.
So
Instead of,
it's,
Instead of repaying the whole thing.
yeah, in 1 year.
Yeah.
And there's a reason, and I'll tell you why, and we
so,
have a
It took
decision
us
to
a
make.
long time.
so here, we'll see how, so 10.8 makes it 17.82 and 13 makes 17.94, so it's 10 cents on the dollar. So I know what proposal he's gonna make. Um,
You want me to lay it out there now? And we can
well,
talk about the
before
other
we
stuff?
lay it out, I wanna, so some people at present in the room have gotten a sheet that says undesignated the fund balance, okay? Unfortunately, it does not include the monies we threw out. Okay, so the undesignated fund balance is actually not gonna increase, it's going to stay 11. Which is better than it going way down, but it's going to stay level. Which means we're gonna be right at the 8% policy for the town. I will update the undesignated, so I have numbers now to update the spreadsheet and all that, and I will extend the lines. I know it was 812, I don't remember what the other one is, I'd have to look, 17.
Excuse me, our policy is to keep it between 8 and 12.
The
8 and
goal is
15.
12,
What?
15 with a goal of 12.
actually, the target says 17 in the policy, I believe. But I believe,
So it's between 8 and 17.
We want to stay around 12.
With a target of 12.
Yeah.
Right.
right, and next year we're gonna land, if a visual extrapolation, I will update the chart this weekend, but we're gonna be right at 8 or right below it.
Okay.
Right, because
Yeah.
this line is gonna go up because the fund levels are going up, hence 8% of an increasing number becomes a bigger number. And so, even if the blue dot from last year stays level, the green line below it increasing means it's gonna be awfully close, if not lower. And so surplus in your sheet, so we have an estimated surplus. Do we have any idea when the audit will actually be done?
We've been pushing them. They were there this week to do the single audit for the grants to finish those up.
Okay,
Like I've told you guys before, this was on us. We had some reconciling issues that we didn't get done until late in the year with some finance stuff. So
so,
they came in this week. As soon as they get that done, they should be able to get us a draft number.
okay, because I'd like to have a number that we can hang our hat on as least from them before the public hearing. So the town made an estimate on what the surplus is, and it's 315, right? But we pulled 317,400 out, so the surplus is actually going down by 2,000. On that chart, it's gonna look like a flat line, but it's actually gonna go down a tiny bit. So. Does that surplus include the money you're talking about?
The money I'm talking about is not undesignated fund balance.
It is not.
It's a fund balance, but it's a restricted fund balance only from the loan program. So it has nothing to do with the general fund unrestricted fund balance.
How
I can
many,
explain to you the two places we can use it.
now I'm interested on how many little pockets do we have laying around?
Well, this is a unique
big
pocket. So we were hoping and we were thinking, as I told you guys before, we had to withdraw all of our money from the loans per the bond bank or the bond attorney. So instead of having $13 million laying in our bank account getting 0.0% interest, we went to Mascoma Bank. We found some secure short-term CDs in the 3 to 6 month range. And we deposited that money. With that, we've earned $119,000 for that exact number, if you want to read it, in interest that we got from it. So I was thinking, great, we can roll that into the general fund or into the loan fund to offset the fraud thing that we had, and the auditor said, absolutely not. The two things we can do with it, one, we could pay the principal down on the loan and just lower the overall cost of the loan. So the other thing we can do is roll it in, and I'm gonna simplify this a little, but roll it into next year's budget as revenue and use it to pay the loan payment.
Oh, okay.
So those are the only two things that we can do with that money. So we either take it, we pay the loan down, we have less interest for a long time. It might be a financially smarter move. Or we have this proposal where we can do this, give $100,000 to pull that tax rate down a little. I don't know that we have a full 100,000 in there, but we have quite a bit of money shoved around in this budget for the move, for making sure we can outfit the select board room upstairs in Whitney Hall. There's just a lot of unknowns with the move that I think will be gone last year, and will absorb a large majority of that, and we'll have less pain moving back from that $300,000 use of.
So if we use it to lower the loan payment, we're gonna have the same discussion again next year. It's like, oh, by the way, our budget stayed the same, but it didn't really stay the same because our loan payment went up.
But I do think we have at least half of that scattered through the budget that won't need to be there next year. So it's almost like a one-time.
I would not.
So you guys decide. I just want to put it out there, but it's an option.
I would,
If not, we use it, we make, at the end of the projects, we make an extra loan payment. It goes away.
so
Yeah.
the smart thing to do long-term with compounding is to pay down the principal. And I think that also makes, like, we don't have to have this discussion again next year about, oh, by the way, taxes are going up again because, we use these $100,000 in interest to actually lower our payments. Now we gotta pay it. I think we've already stretched it. So here's what happened, right? People approved the building project, what, 2 years ago?
2022.
Right, they expected their bill to go up right away, even though we told them it's not going to, it's gonna take a while. Right, then the next year expected their bill to go up, it still didn't completely. Now it's gonna hit, and we're gonna tell them, oh, by the way, it's gonna take another year before it. I'd rather just be done with the whole easing into it and actually paying down our principal, because long term that will save the town more.
A lot of interest.
I think we need to stop sticking our necks out and make smart moves.
Yeah, I also think if there's a year to do it, it's this year we would have the reevaluation. Because
That's
all
all
of this is kind of, I hate to say it, but it's kind of secondary to that reevaluation. So my tax bill's going up or down based on that more than it is on this.
Yes.
So,
Well, this will take effect, just to be really clear, this will take effect next November. Not right now.
When you say next November, you mean November 2025, November 2026?
November twenty twenty-five is when they'll set the tax rate off of this budget.
Oh, yeah, right. But this extra payment that you're talking about would be in 2025 or 2026?
It would be in twenty twenty-five,
Okay,
and it would affect the tax rate that we're talking about right now, that would go into effect next November.
right, but if we're paying down the principal, it's not gonna change these numbers.
No,
It will just save the money over the long.
it
run.
would stay for the next year or so in a restricted fund balance for that purpose.
I'm gonna make a motion, maybe to just that we use it to pay down the principal.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We have people online, do we have to go through?
That needs to be, roll call.
Sorry. Yeah, forgot about you. Sorry, Dave.
Sorry, Dave.
Alright. Nancy, in favor of using the
Yeah.
monies for principal
Yes.
reduction?
Yes.
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 Dimitri, yes.
Yes, John.
Jane, yes.
Surely, yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Alright, unanimous. Thanks. Alright,
Ed, I have a quick question. You mentioned our cyber losses. Where do they fit into the whole budgetary issue?
They don't fit into the budget at all.
Or not now, not next year?
The only way they can end up in the budget is if we decide to budget for it. If we come to the end of the projects and because of that, there's not quite enough money to finish them, then the select board will have to work and decide where we're gonna get that money.
So if we can get the money out of the project, then
If we can manage the money out of the project, there'll be no additional impact.
thank you.
and if we can't, does it go
Is
to the
that
select?
likely?
We're trying. Today, we had to make some change orders that brought it up. Before, we had been bringing them down. We're actually below budget and ahead of schedule right now. We'll see what ends up happening, but ahead of schedule means money saved. Below budget means money saved. So, yeah, we'll continue trying. I don't have the number. Well, I do have the numbers right in front of me right now.
Do we have final numbers yet or not?
No, and we won't have final number. Even Whitney Hall said it'll be 6 months or so after they finish before we get final numbers.
Right, but like on the whole cyber thing,
No,
did money come back yet?
we have some money, let's see, we did just receive. We received a $75,000 insurance payment. I don't know if it's in yet, but they said it's coming if it's not in the bank.
Did the partial money
Which-
come back yet?
We got a partial payment. I don't have that number in front of me. It's like 219. So the total we've gotten back right now is 332,208.23,
Okay,
which leaves the part lost right now of 410.89.
and we expect more to come back from the bank or not?
Probably not, is my thought. There's a couple things out there. We may get another insurance payment that I didn't know about, but I'm not sure. And that's probably in the 50,000 range, but I'm not 100% sure we'll get that at all.
Okay,
So I need to learn a little bit more about that. But that's probably about where we're gonna be at the loss. We did receive, I haven't even told the select board this yet, I don't think, maybe I did, but we received a $19,000 grant for bulletproof windows in the public safety building that we had planned to put in anyway, so that manages some of this out of that. So, we're gonna continue working in those ways, trying to find money everywhere we can.
Those bulletproof in the town.
No,
Not in the library either.
no, and we're actually not putting them on the exterior of the police station. It's the two service windows when you walk in the foyer.
Well,
are
that's what I'm talking
$20,000.
about, the town offices too.
Yeah.
Nice to have them there too.
Well, you can do the math there. $20,000 for two of them, we have 6 windows facing the public. Kinda-
I just said it would have been nice.
Nice.
So I've gone over all my numbers. What questions do people have?
So just to make it clear, Dimitri, sort of to kind of simplify the whole thing. So if we didn't have to like deal with this, using, you know, all these little funds and monies from other places, then basically the budget increase, the overall budget increase for next year would be like around 2.
Yes,
Is that?
yes, and you would have paid more taxes so here, had we not used fund balance last year, the tax increase that you just paid would have been probably double of what it was. And the increase to this year to next year would have been much smaller. So yes, overall you save money. However, you're taking the pain in 2 steps. I considered adding a column with that scenario, but then I figured it was probably. So essentially that's what happened. Like we would have ended up at this kind of rough point anyway. We essentially just took a discount last year by using savings. To not
A
make
good
it,
idea at the time, I guess.
Well, we actually had the discussion and
I know,
we.
we
knew
voted
we
on
were
it and it was not
kicking the can.
unanimous.
And some people, you know, thought it was a bad idea and some people thought it was a good idea.
Speaking of using savings, we did close the various capital reserve funds and we used the figure of $114,000 for that. But it turns out that because time and interest and that sort of thing, we have $4,107 more than that 114. The treasurer of the trustees of trust funds feels like perhaps that should go to the voters to see if they want to take that from fund balance and put that into the CIP capital reserve fund.
4,000?
If people want to put a warrant article for 4,000 to move that, I don't care.
I just was bringing it up.
You don't need, right? It's $4,000. If it goes to the undesignated fund,
I know.
I think we could use it in the undesignated fund now as well.
just leave it there.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Of all the numbers that we've talked about, which ones are estimates at this point? And what's the timeline to get firm numbers? One thing I hate to do is go to the public and say, here are the numbers, and then have them change.
So.
You don't have to look them all.
No.
Just have
No.
3 or 4 key.
I think
things
it's
or whatever.
really coming down to undesignated fund balance unless we continue to make just minor tweaks. I mean, the little things that we have done is we got a $2,400 FEMA payment. We
I
had
can
nothing for
actually-
revenue, we put it in. It's
So-
gonna help.
See here.
Okay.
One caveat, right? All this tax calculation stuff are all estimates because DRA, is it DRA? DRA sets the tax rate. And they have this really big complicated formula that they set the tax rate. Now, that being said, we were actually quite close when you look at the average. It's just the revaluation completely messed it up. If there was no revaluation, I estimated last year that it was what? 6, I have it written here.
Yeah, we were just a little below.
It was like, I had estimated like 6.2 and it ended up being 6, or I had estimated 6.3 and it ended up being 6.6. But because of the revaluation, it just meant it became 6 plus or minus 1.
What is the timeline to get the DRA tax rate?
Next November.
November. So
There's so
something,
many moving pieces and there's actually some pieces that we can control at the end a little bit, but we purposefully conservatively coming into town meeting budget revenues.
right,
And I'm gonna say we're hopeful that we're gonna get more from the state than we put in the budget, those types of things. And we really try to do that, cause I would much rather go to them and say, we're looking at a 13 and it ends up at a 12.5 or a 12.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
so
so that is every year. So that's why your first tax bill is actually not a bill.
It's a mess.
It's an estimated bill.
Mhm.
That's essentially a prepayment on your real tax bill that comes at the end of the year that is set by the state.
Okay.
Okay, now if you want to know what that bill is, I believe I'm correct in saying that you take your two bills, your two last bills, and you average them, and that is your new bill. Is that correct?
For the spring.
Yeah, spring.
Yes.
The spring is the average of your two last bills.
The previous year, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you take the two bills from 2024,
Yeah.
you add them up, you divide by two, that's pretty much your first payment.
Provided you made no changes to your property.
Yes.
Because they're gonna use your new assessment if you
Yeah.
made
Yes.
improvements.
Right. If you decide to build a 5-story apartment building next to your garage, of course, it's going to change. So
Hang on one second. I'm sorry.
all tax numbers are estimates, and we don't get those until the end of the year.
Yeah. Okay. What is the timeline to get the undesignated fund balance?
I'm gonna try to get that from auditors. We're waiting on them, and like I said, they were here this week to try to finish the audit, so.
Okay.
And that's for 2023.
Right.
So
We're gonna have 2024 for a while because they.
Yeah,
don't do
not
the
till-
audit till.
Not till next year. Yeah.
Okay. And are there any other outstanding items that?
so revenues are also estimates, right? Because they're, what are we gonna get in the future? Those are all estimates too. That's all estimates. So then when you look at your budgets, the budgets are essentially also estimates. Because what's gonna happen is the town is gonna go like, hey, we're good with this budget, and hopefully they do that in the next couple of days. I then go make my lovely presentation, right? We then have a public hearing on it. Okay? Then that goes on the warrant article. We're all gonna vote for, hey, what are we gonna put on the warrant article? Are we recommending or not recommending? Then it goes to town meeting, and people can change that town meeting all they want. So the budgets are really not final until town meeting is done. So essentially everything can change.
And will.
And
moving target.
it's a moving target.
Let me rephrase the question. Do we have any firm numbers?
I mean, the expense numbers, the revenue numbers we're giving you
I get it.
are what they're gonna be.
Yeah.
Unless, I mean, if we get another revenue check and we can talk to you guys and say, we can put this in, we didn't budget for it, it'll bring the proposal down.
Yeah.
But the expense numbers, unless you guys ask us to do something, I think we're as thin as we can get. Any
So-
other minor changes are really not gonna move that needle much.
Are you concerned that we have more risk than previous years of going over those numbers?
I think right now, I think we're good. You know, there's always changes.
These two big projects.
With the two big projects, we're just gonna have to really watch what we're spending moving forward on those. As you've seen from last year with the 200,000 unbudgeted, we did have some open positions, those types of things. We almost always end up with a little bit of those openings. We don't usually end up with a unbudgeted $200,000 payment. So I'm pretty comfortable that we can manage within this budget and get done what we need to get done.
Thank you.
So I believe you're saying you're gonna get a new spreadsheet because something is changing. You said something, maybe even from 2020.
Oh, I did, so you're gonna see changes in this one that I gave you, that I'm gonna have to get to you in an Excel file.
Okay.
Because we got reimbursements from the trustees of trust funds that applied to some of the accounts in the general fund.
Right.
So the current year expenses will be less.
Like for 2024.
For
2024, it's not gonna do anything to 2025.
And so I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna make my presentation like I do. Essentially, I'm gonna follow the same as last year. What I'm not gonna add in front of it is this, hey, this review of 2024 and the 23 to 24 to 25 stuff. And some of the statistics of the taxes. I'm gonna make that whole presentation. We'll review it essentially 3 times. We'll review it at the next meeting, right? People will give comments like, hey, you know, maybe change this wording. Oh, by the way, we should highlight that we got this grant and, you know, things like that. Is there a joint meeting with the select board or not?
It's, yeah, the meeting,
Right,
is it the
so
fourth?
then,
February 4th.
so then there's a meeting with the select board, right? And I believe at that meeting is when everybody goes and votes about recommending or not recommending the different articles.
Well, the select board will, the budget committee will do it after the public hearing.
Right.
Oh, yes, thank you. And then there's the public hearing. So what I generally also do is before the next meeting, I will send the PowerPoint out so that people can provide, you know, input before, right? And I can get a better polish. Unless again, people want to make changes to the budget numbers.
He has his hand raised.
Yes, Dave?
Thank you. I have had hand up for a while. I don't know if when is the appropriate time, but I don't see any different time that would be appropriate. Lebanon recently reduced their total budget proposal by a 1.2%. And my bottom line is that this proposed 2025 budget bottom line is still too high. This continues the, what is it? 26% with an increase of 12.8% over the past several years, and is why I ran for a position on this committee.
What are you proposing? We reduce.
Can you let me finish, please? Such increases, however, are justified, however supposedly justified, are not sustainable and need to be contained. The answer is broad direction from this committee and the select board, not micromanagement exactly which proposals to decrease. The town manager and the various department heads' jobs are to manage, quote unquote, these directions. This excerpt from Dimitri's summary spreadsheet, which I have, can you present that, Elisa?
If you want to stop sharing, he has the, his.
Why didn't you do that?
Represent this excerpt, and this comes directly from Dimitri's previous summary spreadsheet, may be slightly varied. The largest dollar and or percentage proposed budget increases, and following Dimitri's advice to go where the real money is. This budget committee and the select board should direct the town manager and the department leaders to propose appropriate reductions in their budget proposals with the goal of a 1.5 to 2.8% reduction overall, not in addition to the 10% from last year in the proposed budget, 2025 budget, to be presented to town meeting. I have 3 suggestions that may be a starting point for those discussions, but I do not want to micromanage any of those departments. One is a hiring freeze for all town employees, including the recreation director. 2 is to decline the K-9 grant proposal because that will increase both current costs and future costs to this town. And thirdly, to decrease the recreation director position to at least 50%, if not eliminate it totally. Thank you.
Just for clarification, there's no cost to the town at this time for the Canaan.
But there will be from town coverage for the training of the officer who will be working with the K-9 dog.
Not, yeah, well, not during the time of the grant, the next few years.
How long is it?
It'll still be an overall, it should be a regional, if not state, proposal. Not
So,
something our town.
so Dave, so I see that you have several suggestions. I recommend that you make a motion to see if somebody will second on it so that we can vote.
I so move.
So what is your
Why
motion?
are you moving?
I so move is to direct the town manager and the department heads to reduce their total budget bottom line to no more than 10%,
What?
including the debt service and the adjustments for the previous year's financial, I won't call them
So-
shenanigans, but financial adjustments, shall we say. Thank you.
So you want the town to make sure the increase in the budget is less than 10%?
Correct.
Well, the increase in the budget is 2%.
Right.
No, the increase in the budget with total budget is 12 point, what did you call it, 6% last year, 12.8% at the last meeting.
That is the estimated increase in taxes when we account for changes in revenues and use of fund balance. The increase in the budget, as we are proposing it, is 2%.
Okay,
Not
so
10%.
decrease the total to less than 10%. So that would
that-
be reducing it to less.
That
less than
really is because
by
it's
2%.
2%. So the increase currently is 2%, which is less than 10.
Reduce it to zero.
Okay, so your motion is to reduce the increase to 0. Anybody second? Anybody want to second the motion?
David, I just want to say, and everyone knows that I'm a stickler about stuff and don't like spending a dime if we don't need to. I honestly, the rec thing is a sore spot in my head. Ed knows that obviously from my comment, but I have to tell you that I feel like I am not seeing anything that I can say we need to make those kind of changes. It's the decisions that we made last year is what's impacting that 12. And I think that's what you need to think about and what you need to look at. Because as I just said to Dimitri, that if you take away that craziness that we did last year, we're looking at like around a 2% increase. I'm not sure you can squeeze the nickel any further than that.
Okay, so I withdraw my motion and would substitute it for a suggestion that the town embrace these three proposals: a hiring freeze, declining the canine grant proposal, and to decrease the recreation director to either 50% or eliminate the position. Thank you.
I still think you need to leave the canine thing out of there because I think that's really a moot point at this time. And I just don't feel like that's a good suggestion. That's my own personal thought.
So I'd have to look at that too. That was accepted by the select board and the grant paperwork's been signed.
That's outside of our.
So I withdraw that segment.
So what's on the table?
Freezing, hiring freeze and decreasing the recreation director to 50% position or eliminating it. If that's.
Anyone?
the select board.
Is that-
Dave, I think you need to make two separate motions.
And can someone tell me if this is within our authority?
I think you're saying it's a recommendation.
It's not within the budget committee's authority
Yeah.
to
Authority.
change position.
To go to the
They
select
can
board.
change the money allocated.
So David, it's Dan, at this point, are those recommendations or is that an official motion that you're trying to make?
I'm trying to make an official motion. If I need to do a recommendation to the select board for a hiring freeze, I do so. And if I so move, and if I need to make a motion regarding the recreation director, I make the motion to reduce that position to a 50% position and not overlap.
Anybody second? Nobody seconding, motion is failed. All right. Any other motions?
Not a motion, but just a discussion in that, I, like David, am also frugal, and looking for opportunities to save money. I think we've done a great job on this budget. I don't see a lot of money in here to be saved. Having said that, I don't think we should ever stop looking for savings. We've had some discussions as this committee has, with some very creative ideas. I don't want to cut services in this town, especially police, fire, EMS. I think we're where we need to be. However, I think there's some other areas that we can look at going forward and we should continue to look.
So on that note, do you wanna present your idea?
I don't have an original idea. I've heard ideas from others. I want to take credit for it.
You don't wanna take credit for it. So last year, we asked the town to go, hey, take a look at benefits, right? And we saved money. So this year, we'd like to assign new homework. The idea is, so it has come up last year and in years before. I think we should put some numbers to the whole transfer station, right? And so certain people have made the idea, hey, let's just stop curbside pickup and we'll do it all ourselves, which we have said, oh my God, that's gonna get way too expensive because we have to expand the transfer station, but let's put some numbers to it. Other people have suggested, let's just close the transfer station, which I think is not a great idea either because it probably causes its own problems. Gene has made the idea, let's charge per bag if you want to go to the transfer station. And so I think it makes sense that the town look at that and then next year, for next year's budget, present, hey, here's the options. If the town comes up with new ideas, great, present them. And so that we can actually put some numbers to this whole idea. That was one. Have another one?
I do not. I just like want to encourage us all to continue to look for things. And I think that's one idea.
Yep.
And doing the modeling behind those and pros
I
and
wouldn't
cons.
mind including the whole glass discussion in that. Even though the glass discussion exploded at the last public hearing, just by the idea that we'd not recycle glass, even though the glass ends up in the landfill anyway.
And there's new stuff coming out on that.
Okay. And so,
I can tell you right now, Lebanon does not want that in the landfill because we're
Okay.
filling the landfill quickly. So I don't think taking it in trash like we talked last year is a good idea, but we may have some discussions on ways to reduce our solid waste load, which will reduce costs.
And Dave had a question and Roy as well.
Dave,
I tried to sign off. I don't believe I succeeded. Sorry.
that's okay. Roy,
I know it already got handled, but I just want to make sure the budget committee, it's very clear that the grant that was already accepted and we're in the process of, I just want to make sure there's not misinformation out there. There is zero cost to the town for 5 years, to include some of the stuff that Dr. Buffet had listed, overtime and stuff like that. So I just want to make sure they have the right information. Thank you.
thanks. Any other topics?
I have some real concerns about the examination of the trash process. I mean, it has to happen. But I think we need to be very careful as we look at the things that we are locked into by the very nature of where we're located. Transportation costs is an enormously complex issue.
Right.
And I really don't want people to start jumping up and down saying, oh, there's an easy solution here.
Right.
There is
And
no
we're-
easy
we're-
solution.
We're leaving it to the town to define the scope, right?
Give them a year to do.
We just want to discuss it during the next budget season with some numbers behind it, rather than, oh yeah, that's never gonna work because that will be too expensive. Oh no, that's not gonna cause any savings. We want to
Okay.
put a little bit of numbers to it.
Yeah.
However, the town wants to define the scope in the most appropriate and a reasonable way. We don't want this to turn into $100,000 study, right?
Right.
We also don't want somebody to go sit down and throw some numbers on a piece of paper over the coffee break and call it done either.
Right.
We want it to be reasonable, and we're confident that the town can define what reasonable is themselves.
Thank you.
Other things the committee wants to discuss? Public comment?
There's a
No,
thing
I-
that says
one of the
cable access. channel
Oh,
here.
on the agenda here.
Sorry.
Only to wrap up.
My
a few things.
apologies.
I don't want anyone to ignore the potential revenue sources. There's some capital property or some properties in town that will be sold within the next 12 months, if with any luck. There'll also be a substantial development or two. I won't mention them in particular. So there's some revenue potential that will help the picture look a little easier in a year.
Maybe.
Okay.
And I have a new car.
So, sorry, I was under the assumption that Ed was covering his own topic and I didn't realize you were here.
See, you know, I'm covering cable access because I'm cable access.
I
No.
did not realize that.
Yes, yeah, I have been for 14 years.
My
And we came to you
sincere
14 years,
apologies.
we came to the select board 14 years ago, and be very truthful, I'm not sad that it got cut. But I just wanted to show everybody that we came here 14 years ago because we were getting no franchise fees or anything. And we said, well, if you do cable access, then you could get franchise fees, because that's what it was 14 years ago. You had to have cable access. I got a feeling you don't need it anymore. So I just wanted to show you what we've done over the last 14 years and how much of a surplus the town got out of it. And I'm gonna go one step further and say, if you're gonna cut cable access because of franchise fees, then Comcast people shouldn't be the only people paying for this. If you've got Lightship and you've got Hub 66, I don't know why we shouldn't be charging them, because not only do Comcast customers pay the franchise fee, Comcast pays to be on the pole. When Lightship came, we gave them our free 1 foot on the pole. If you don't know what that means, is back 100 years ago, when poles were put in, you know how they used to have pull stations for fire department? That 1 foot was set up for the pull stations for the fire departments. They don't do it anymore, but the town still owned that 1 foot. So when Lightship came, we said, we're not gonna charge you, you can use our 1 foot. So I think that's another piece of revenue we should be able to get.
Same with Hub 66.
And the same thing, Hub 66 was even a better deal, because Lightship at one point was charging Hub 66 for their equipment upstairs that we were given to Lightship for free. So I just think, obviously not for this year's budget, but you ought to look into that for next year's budget as another way of getting some revenue. But over the 14 years, basically the excess over what the you paid for the cable access piece is about $426,000 worth of revenue that came because Curtis Payne came here 14 years ago and says, hey, we can get you some revenue. Now, personally, I don't care that you're cutting it because it's one less job for me, because I've been the treasurer for 14 years, so I don't have to pay anybody anymore, and we'll be closing down cable access. Now, I don't know what that does, because I'm looking at the $60,000 number, and that says to me there's about 1,000 customers. I'm not sure all those customers are in Enfield, because our cable access also goes to Canaan. So, and I don't believe that they pay a franchise fee in Canaan, but I don't know what Comcast does, because it's the same line. When it hits the Lebanon line, Lebanon Enfield line, it becomes Channel 8. But prior to that, it's Lebanon's cable. So if we shut down, it means we'll be getting Lebanon cable access, I guess. But nobody seems to watch it anyways, because of the changes in the last 14 years. So that's just it. I'm not glad we're getting rid of cable access, but I'm glad I'm getting rid of a job. So, and I know Ed's talked to Curtis, and we basically said, we'll shut it down. If you guys want the equipment, we'll give you the equipment, because you may want to use it for something, because we won't have a use for it anymore.
Any questions?
Yeah, but that's the only thing that they're able to get. Cause Channel 8 will be off the air.
Well, thank you very much for everything you've done.
Thank you for 48 years.
Yeah.
Any
I
other?
think I was here at the beginning of that.
You were.
Kate Stewart has her hand up.
Kate?
Hey, thank you, guys. So this has been a conversation for quite a few years since I joined the select board. And we have talked about Channel 8 ad nauseum. And we have talked about the fact that they are often not online or don't show anything. And I have raised multiple times in a public forum that they were not a legal entity because they failed to file all of their filings with the Secretary of State. So I kind of have trouble with a woe is me. Why aren't we paying them versus why are we paying them? Because we're paying an organization that hasn't existed part of the time. And they don't perform the service all the time. They have very rarely in recent years been to our meetings. And I have to tell you guys, I have a real problem with them charging a fee for a service that isn't rendered because I don't care if people want a service that is for everyone in town and they're just taxing the people because it's a user tax, right? To access this. I care a lot about doing what we say and saying what we do. And this is not it. You know, oh, it's a money grab. And I am not okay with taking money from people who have cable, which I personally do not have, to do any kind of service. So I guess, I don't know. I feel like this has been a long term kind of really sketchy revenue source for us. And the internet's there, it's free, it's usable, it's pretty inexpensive. And so why are we relying so heavily on this as a revenue source when it's not really legitimate, when it hasn't been for a very long time? Thank you.
Thanks for the comment. Any other comment?
I do. I, for once, agree with Kate. Thank you.
Other comment?
Oh, I was just gonna say, we might remind people who are up for election this year.
Oh, yes. Who's up for election?
I am.
Am
And
I?
let's see who else is.
No, you're not. Never.
Me? Jane and Nancy. Plus, there's an empty place.
Okay. And by the way, when am I due? Is it next year?
I will send out reminders to everybody whose term is up to let
Okay.
them know. And once we have the filing period and all the positions nailed
Yeah.
down and.
Somebody's doing permanent.
So
It's near the end of June.
when is the next meeting?
May 23rd.
23rd. Okay. So I'll have slides out probably that Monday morning. Like I'll make sure the slides are finished by the weekend and then by that Monday morning I'll finish slides. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
What?
All right, meeting adjourned.
Nice job.
It's